Hello, welcome to another edition of Mississippi Stories. I'm your host, Marshall Ramsey, editor-at-large and editorial cartoonist for Mississippi Today. Pretty excited about our guest today because I have been a weather geek, I guess, since I was a little kid growing up. And I've always loved the weather and really appreciate the hard work that the meteorologists at the National Weather Service do. And of course, our guest today is the meteorologist-in-charge for the Jackson National Weather Service. And he also has the distinction of the 122 National Weather Service officers to be I guess you're still the lone African-American meteorologist in charge, which is a good thing for you and the fact that you have obtained that role, but it's a bad thing because we need to obviously get more diversity in the National Weather Service, and you are playing a big part of that as well. But I'm very, very happy to have William Bill Parker here with us today. Bill, thank you for taking the time. As we are recording this, tomorrow is a severe weather event. This will appear next Sunday. But I know you're very busy, so thank you for taking the time.
Well, thank you. And I'm not the only African-American meteorologist in charge anymore.
Yay. Okay.
Alicia Bowser, who used to be the warning coordination meteorologist here in Jackson, Mississippi, she's now the meteorologist in charge down in Tallahassee, Florida. So
fantastic. Yeah, very good. Congratulations. That is obviously my research failed me, but I'm very happy to hear that. And I'm happy for her too. I remember watching her on some of the videos that y'all put up on that. And you grew up in New Orleans, and I could imagine that the weather environment down there probably got you interested in weather as it did for me growing up in Atlanta with the hurricanes and everything you have in New Orleans. Is that what kind of got you interested in this career?
Yeah. Growing up in New Orleans and, dealing with hurricanes, year in and year out, I was always interested in weather. And so that was a interest that I had. I didn't know exactly how to pursue it.
Yeah.
Coming up. And so what happened was in high school, I took a statistics class. And it was actually a dual credit class through the University of Louisville. And so in that stats class, we basically had a assignment where we kind of learned how meteorologists came up with their chances of precipitation. And so that really garnered my interest. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to pursue this. I want to be a meteorologist, and I'm going to find out what it takes to become a meteorologist. And so that's really how I got got on the trail of actually becoming a meteorologist.
So there's actually a lot of people don't realize that there is an awful lot of math and science in what you do every single day.
Exactly. And, I always tell, young kids who want to go into meteorology, if you like math and you like science, then you could become a meteorologist. I also tell them if you don't like math and if you don't like science, then it's probably going to be a little bit tough for you to become a meteorologist.
Yeah, you'll end up as a cartoonist. I can tell you that from experience on that.
Yeah.
That's cool, though. I mean, like you said, you learned how to. Now, how do you come up with the percentage on that? Because I've always wondered that, because you hear 40% chance of rain, and we know that means, well, 4 in 10 chance maybe it's going to rain. Is that like 40% of the area is going to receive rain, or there's literally just a 4 out of 10 times under the certain conditions that you're going to get rain?
Yeah, it's literally the more of the 4 out of 10, and they're really forecasting at a specific location.
Yeah.
Now it does cover an area when they're doing it, but they're forecasting at specific points. So, for instance, when we are forecasting, let's say, a 60% chance of rain for the Jackson area, they really are looking at more so the chance of rain that we're going to get 100 of an inch of rain at the Jackson airport, because that's our official forecast point. However, that does cover the area that we're in as well here in the metro.
Mississippi has several weather offices. How do they determine that? Is it by the coverage of the radar, or how does that work?
Um, Radar coverage is part of it. Um, Back in the 90s, they had what was called, a modernization of the National Weather Service, and they basically increased the amount of forecast offices. And so at one time, the Jackson office pretty much provided a forecast for pretty much most of the state, if not all of the state of Mississippi. And then in the modernization age, they realized that, you know, we have forecast officers out there, and a big piece of forecasting is communication and with the local people that are there, especially emergency managers. And so they begin to break up. Um, they begin to not break up, actually expand the amount of forecast officers to cover certain regions. And so here in Jackson, Mississippi, we still cover central Mississippi, northeast Louisiana, and two counties in southeast Arkansas. You got officers that cover certain sections of southern Mississippi, with Mobile covering the extreme southeast and New Orleans covering south central Mississippi. And so that's basically what happened was, um, rather than have one particular office serve, let's say, an entire state as it relates to forecasting, let's put more officers that's out there that can cover and serve the needs of emergency management in the communities that we have, and break that up. And that's basically how that came about.
Okay, that makes all the sense in the world. We'll go back. Speaking of the '90s, talk about that. That's about the time that you graduated from college. When you were in high school, and you said, "You know what, Shazam, I want to be a weather, I want to be meteorologist." Um, was there a real clear path for you to take? Did you know where you were going to go to college immediately, or how did that work for you?
No. So being interested in hurricanes, the school that I originally wanted to go to was Florida State. I start researching which schools had meteorology, and me thinking, okay, that's a Florida school. They deal with hurricanes. I can learn a lot about hurricanes if I go to Florida State. Well, it came to find out I couldn't afford it. I couldn't afford the out of state fees. Um, it wasn't like I had a very, very high ACT where I would get a scholarship. Um, and so what happened was I decided really that I was going to change my major and go into either chemistry or geophysics. I didn't even know that University of Louisiana Monroe had a program in meteorology at the time. Um, and so I had an uncle who went to Northwestern, and he was actually a chemistry, math, geophysics kind of major. And I really was just trying to follow in his footsteps. Well, he knew that I really, really wanted to be a meteorologist. And what happened was he ran across an article where Jackson State's meteorology program was being highlighted. Well, I had another uncle who played football at Jackson State. And so I was very familiar with Jackson State University because we would always come up to his football games. He actually played a couple of years with Walter Payton. So my
Yeah.
uncle went to Jackson State back in '76. I think he graduated in 1980. So I was real young, but still had some familiarity with Jackson State. And once he told me that Jackson State had a meteorology program, you know, he was like, Bill, he's like, we can get you there. You can afford to go there. And he said, you can pursue your dream of becoming a meteorologist. And that's really when it took off for me to come to Jackson State and to pursue the dream of becoming a meteorologist.
Sounds like you've got two really wonderful uncles.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, the one who played football, he's passed away.
Yeah.
But he had a great impact on me. And the other one, he still has a huge impact on me today.
I know he's pretty proud of you, to say the least. Jackson State's meteorology program started in 1975, so it's been around for a while. When you were there, the classes weren't terribly large, and that had to be helpful, didn't it?
Well, yeah, that was a benefit.
Yeah.
There was one or two classes. I was the only student. It was me and the
Oh, wow.
professor. Yeah,
Yeah.
and my synoptic class, it was just me and the professor. And I never forget. He would come in and he would say, "Hey, I want you to read this chapter, and then come back in the next class period. I want you to teach me what you learned."
Oh,
And
wow.
so I would actually be at the board, and he would actually be down in the desk, and I would have to just go through pretty much everything that I learned in that chapter that he would assign me. So um, the also benefit of it being a small program is the graduates, those folks who come through Jackson State. We're like family.
Yeah.
It's a close knit. Actually, just last week we went and did some workshops with the current students who are at Jackson State. Alumni just came in, and we spent 2 days just talking to them about real life, giving them a break away from the classroom setting
Yeah.
and talking more about life and what it really takes to become a meteorologist once you graduate from the university. More professional development type workshops we did with them.
What a blessing it is for them to have you so close by now too, because you're just right down the road.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I love my job, and I love the proximity that I have with the university where I learned how to be a meteorologist.
Yeah, and they've got a really good football season going right now, football team too. So that's an added perk also. You really enjoy mentoring. You did you have mentors along the way that really helped you till you could sit in that chair?
Oh yeah, yeah. I've had several mentors in the field and outside of the field. Most of my mentors really are outside of the field of meteorology.
Yeah.
Um, and yes, I have mentors who are in the field of meteorology, but when it comes to leadership, you can learn leadership from anyone.
Yeah.
Um, if you're willing to sit down and become a follower. That's what I always say.
Yeah.
Before you lead, you have to learn how to be a good follower. And so, my one of my biggest mentors is actually my pastor, and he doesn't just teach me, you know, how to lead inside the church. He's taught me how to lead outside of the
Yeah.
church. He's taught me how to lead in my career and how to have compassion and patience and work with individuals. And so, I've had many mentors who've helped me get to this seat and to this chair inside the Weather Service. One of the greatest mentors I've had passed away. He was the meteorologist in charge in Shreveport, but he passed away last year. A man by the name of Mario Valverde. I would not be where I'm at today. And before him, the meteorologist in charge in Shreveport was Armando Garza. He passed away as well. But those individuals help instill in me and show me the way of how to lead people in this agency and to lead with care and to help others grow. It's not just about me as a
Yeah.
meteorologist in charge. My job is to make sure that the individuals in this office are growing in their careers as well.
You've got 20 meteorologists there in the office, don't you?
Yeah, we have
Yeah.
about 20, but total staff support is about 27.
Okay. Okay. So you've got a pretty good sized crew on that. And of course, one thing I thought was kind of funny, you said, what do you like most about working at the National Weather Service? And you said shift work. There's always somebody there at the office, basically, right?
Yeah, yeah, we're 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And when I say shift work, I really smile, and that's a joke.
Yeah, I know.
Most of my meteorologists can't stand the shift work, because the way we work is, 1 week you're working days, the next week you're on evenings, the next week you're on midnights. It's not like you get a month of days, a month of evenings, a month of midnights. Their schedule is changing from week to week. Um, and I have some new meteorologists that have come into the office, and Matt, just a couple, actually about 2 weeks ago, I had one of my younger meteorologists came to me, and she was like, this is tough, and I just looked at her. I was like, didn't you know this before you accepted this job? And she was like, yeah. And so, I just talked her through it. I said,
Yeah.
didn't you go through school? This is what you wanted to be. I said, what I don't want you to do is quit.
Yeah.
And I did 18 years of shift work, and I explained that to her. And I let her know, I said, my goal is to make sure you don't have to do 18 years of shift work. If you do the things that I am trying to guide you in, and
Mhm.
if you let me know the goals or where you want to get to, um, um, yes, you have to go through the shift work to really get an understanding of the meteorology and forecasting. But in the long run, if you want to move into management and if you want to help open doors for others, that's my goal, is to help you get to where you want to be in your career. So, but yeah, shift work is a big part of what we do.
Definitely. I always like reading the forecast discussions between the night shift and the day shift and seeing how things go back and forth on that. But I'm getting a little too much in the weeds. You originally thought you were going to go into broadcasting, didn't you?
Yeah. Because that's, as a young person, that's all I saw was
Yeah.
the TV meteorologist. And so I originally thought I was going to go into broadcasting. Actually spent 3 years working, volunteering. They weren't paying me, volunteering at WLBT and working with, at that time, Paul Williams.
Yeah.
Every weekend I was up there, pretty much helping him put his weather broadcast together, and in between those times, practicing in front of the camera, trying to get ready. But going into my senior year, um, I got an opportunity to work at the National Weather Service in Slidell.
Yeah.
And at the end of that summer, the meteorologist in charge, his name was Billy Crouch. He asked me, he said, Bill, he's like, when are you graduating? And so I told him, and he's like, what are you going to do after you graduate? And I told him, I was like, well, Mr. Crouch, I enjoyed my summer here at the National Weather Service in Slidell. I said, but for 3 years, I've been working to become a broadcast meteorologist. And I said, so after graduation, that's probably my plan. And he was like, do you have a job lined up already in broadcast meteorology when you graduate? I said, no, sir. He said, well, if I can promise you a job with the National Weather Service, he says, will you come and work for us upon graduation? I said, yes, sir. And so typically, I tell younger meteorologists, you never know what door is going to open for you.
Yeah.
Whatever door that God opens for you, be prepared to walk through it. And so that was the door that he opened for me, the operational meteorology side and not the broadcast side that I thought I would pursue. And so, as I tell young meteorologists, prepare for any door that opens for you in this field. It could be the research side of meteorology, it could be the operational, it could be the broadcast side. Actually, a friend of mine at Jackson State, he wanted to go straight operational. Well, the broadcast side opened up for him. That door opened up for him. So, yeah,
Well, Bill,
that's
the
what.
irony of it is that now, thanks to Facebook Live, you are doing broadcasting now.
Yeah, with Facebook Live, and that's the great part about the National Weather Service, especially the
Yeah.
field offices. We have to communicate. We can't just
Mhm.
forecast the weather. We have to communicate the weather, but also we also have to follow up with research and so that our
Yeah.
forecast can be better. So the great thing about working at a National Weather Service forecast office is you can get some aspects of broadcast, operational definitely, and even the research aspects of this field. You can tap into that as well.
My 14-year-old loves weather. And so one of your meteorologists was very kind to invite him to the weather service and he helped release one of the weather balloons, which is a key part of forecasting, which I know that before the storm that came last week, y'all set off an extra one just to see what the atmosphere was doing. So like I said, there is a huge research component what you're doing every day, isn't there?
Yeah, actually, we're working with actually working with a project called Perils right now, where we're releasing balloons every 6 hours. Before every major, weather event, severe weather event, we're releasing weather balloons every 6 hours. Um, Not every 6 hours, every 4 hours, I think now.
Oh,
Um, yeah, and so um, it's an event that it's an office where yes, research is very important
mhm.
because we're trying to get better and better with our warnings.
Yeah.
We're trying to get better and better with the way we communicate our warnings. So research is very important to what we do here at the National Weather Service.
A lot of people don't understand the difference between a watch and a warning. I think here in Mississippi, you probably do because it seems like we have lots of practice with it. But obviously, a watch means that conditions are favorable for either severe thunderstorm or whatever weather type that the watch is for. Warning means that you better take action, correct?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
watch means that the atmosphere conditions are favorable for severe thunderstorms or tornadoes, or if we're forecasting winter weather or flooding. The atmosphere's conditions are favorable for that, and we want you to prepare uh, for the possibility of severe weather or tornadoes, severe thunderstorms or tornadoes. When it comes to warnings, it means that either a tornado or a severe thunderstorm has been spotted or has had a history of being produced when it comes to severe thunderstorms, or it could be radar indicated.
Yeah.
And radar indicated means that it may not be happening, but it could be imminent. It can happen at any moment or at any time. So take action immediately. The preparation stage should be over with. We want you to take action immediately with warnings.
And obviously you recommend getting a weather radio, correct?
Yes, NOAA Weather Radio is the voice of the National Weather Service.
Yeah.
We treat NOAA Weather Radio similar to the way firemen treat smoke alarms and smoke detectors. With NOAA Weather Radio, they will alarm you. If you're asleep at night, they will wake you. In Mississippi, we deal with nighttime tornadoes all the time, and I can't tell you the amount of people I've ran across where they said NOAA Weather Radio kind of woke them up out of their sleep. Now we have cell phone technology where you can get, tornado warnings through them. You can't get severe thunderstorm warnings through the cell phone technology. It's just the tornado warnings that come through that right now.
Yeah, severe thunderstorms, straight line winds and hail that can cause almost as much damage as a tornado. So it's good to pay attention to those too.
Yeah, and what I typically like to say, in Mississippi, we have a lot of trees. So it doesn't matter if straight line winds blow a tree down or a tornado blew a tree down. The tree came down, and it can come down on your house or home or business. So it's important to know that whenever we issue warnings for severe thunderstorms or tornadoes, we want people to take cover.
Yeah, it's also important. I remember when I first moved here, we literally had a tornado warning the first night I lived here. I was like, that's a Chamber of Commerce moment. Thank you for that big invite. But they showed the little map on the screen. I was like, I don't even know what county I live in, because I just moved here. So it's always important. I did a cartoon joking. That's how we learn geography in Mississippi is through tornado warnings. But it's important to know where you are, right?
Exactly. It's important to know your county. It's important to know the counties that are around your county. And it's also important to know the cities and communities that are around, the city and community that you live in.
Let's talk back on your career a little bit. A lot of times, and I had a friend that was in the weather service and he got bounced, he'd be in San Diego and then he'd come to, back to the Southeast, and which is pretty darn different when it comes to forecasting weather. San Diego is like, it's partly cloudy and sunny. Oh, except for June, it's going to be overcast. That was about it. But you've been pretty fortunate. You've been pretty close to home the whole time in your whole career, haven't you?
Yeah. After graduation, I moved to Shreveport. That was my first weather forecast office that I worked in outside of, the time when I was a student in Slidell.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that the day I walked in Shreveport weather forecast office, I was trying to plan an exit out. But it just so happened God had me there 22 years.
Yeah.
And so I pretty much grew up in the Shreveport National Weather Service office, from a meteorologist to senior meteorologist to warning, coordination meteorologist. And then, 4 years of being the WCM, a warning coordination meteorologist at Shreveport, this position came open here as the MIC. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if any people in Mississippi remember Alan Gerard, but they had a fantastic MIC here. And really, he loved this area. I never thought he would leave this job. But
he got a pretty sweet job in Oklahoma, though. He's got a good deal with the Storm Prediction Center. So if I remember correctly, see, Alan's wife taught with my wife, and he lived about 100 yards away from me. So when he moved, I took over his rain gauge.
Okay.
So I now have I now have Alan's rain gauge. But yeah, he was top notch. But I was glad to see you come aboard. And like I said, it was pretty historic when you got the job too. And I thought that was kind of a neat twist to it too. And the fact that you were a Jackson State grad, I thought that was kind of icing on the cake.
Yeah, yes, sir. And so, for this job when it came open, I was shocked, and I was like, okay, I'm going to apply for it. And so um, was able to move back. Really, Jackson is almost like home, and still even get even a little bit closer to New Orleans. So I'm almost like in heaven, working back in Jackson, Mississippi right now. Um, but most meteorologists, they move around the country, and they may not start close to home. Um, you may start out, in California. You can start out, in the northern plains. Um, Typically, the good part about the National Weather Service is you can move around. So if you, let's say you're interested in fire weather, then you can move out west. If you're interested in winter weather, you can. There'll be openings up north. If you're interested, let's say in hurricanes, you want to move down closer to a coastal area, there'll be vacancies in coastal areas. And so for me, Louisiana, Mississippi has been it. And so I've enjoyed every single bit of it.
So you like tornadoes, right? So that's why you're here right in the middle of Dixie Alley, right?
I'll be honest, I really like severe storms,
Yeah.
and forecasting severe storms. And then I'm still a hurricane enthusiast, so I get the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
I can't stand winter weather. So you don't have to worry about me going up to Chicago, Minnesota. Um, you know, February last year, that big winter ice storm that we kind of had come through here, that was a booger bear for me. And so I'm
I
not
think it was
if
for
it
everybody.
gets exactly if it gets below 40 degrees, I'm
Yeah.
freezing. I'm freezing. I can't stand cold weather. So the deep south is where I love forecasting the weather.
Well, and the good thing is, you're like I said, there aren't too many dull days here. You're going to get something here.
Exactly.
That's the nice thing. Like I said, I was at, what's his name, Coleman, for that started the Weather Channel, was out in San Diego, and he was one of the weather broadcast meteorologists. And I always joke, Ken Coleman, I think it was. Anyway, I can't remember his name, but I always joke that they just recorded him one day and he took the next 364 days off, because that's all he did was, oh, it's going to be 74 and partly cloudy, just like, it was pretty easy. But here, no, it's, you get something new every day.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm watching this, and say my 14-year-old is going to watch this, right? And he wants to become a meteorologist. If he wants to become, what does he need to do as in school, as a high school student, to end up someday possibly being able to work with you?
Okay. So if he's 14, I would suspect he's either in the eighth or ninth grade.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I would advise him to take every single math course that his high school provides. So
Yeah.
if there's trigonometry available, take it. If there's calculus available, take it. If there's advanced math available, take it. Statistics, take it. Take every single math course that you possibly can take, just to prepare you for college. Follow also with the physical sciences. If physics is available, take it. They're going to take algebra, and we know that they're going to take chemistry and biology. But if physics is available at the school, some type of physics course, take it. If there's some type of high school engineering course, uh, take it. That's And then the other side of it is start to um, do the things that you say you're doing. Um, Engage in some type of weather projects, like you say you have a rain gauge at your house. Um, Interact with your local meteorologist, broadcast meteorologist, let them know that you're interested. And then you got a host of meteorologists here at the National Weather Service office who you can talk to that can help you with, you know, understanding meteorology a little bit better. But it starts with schooling, and because the interest, what happens is there's a lot of people who are interested in meteorology, but once they find out the amount of math and science associated with it, they realize, okay, this is not what I want to do.
Yeah.
And so I'll go back to what I said. If you like math and science, you can become a meteorologist, because the weather part is fun.
Yeah.
But it's the math and science that gets most young people hung up. And so high school will prepare you for the rigorous college courses that you have to take. Our curriculum in meteorology is somewhat on par with what engineers have to take in college, especially with the math and science courses that are taken. So um, that's the way I would guide him. I think he has a passion for
Hmm.
weather, but now get a passion for the math and the science, because that's the coursework that you're going to have to take to fulfill the full curriculum of becoming a meteorologist.
One of the things I love, a quote from you, and I believe, yeah, it was from you, that said basically that weather doesn't discriminate, and the fact that you do a lot of work to try to recruit kids like you that were when you were growing up in New Orleans, and helping them discover a path to be able to get them to come work with the National Weather Service or work in broadcast meteorology or work for a company that needs a meteorologist or go work in the Navy or whatever. Tell us a little bit about those efforts that you've been able to do, because you just looking back over your history, you like to get out and get involved in the community, don't you?
Yeah, it's important to me. Diversity, equity is very important, and it's important to our field. I don't think people realize how weather impacts every single one, and it's not so much that we issue warnings well at the National Weather Service, but how do we communicate with every single community? How do we communicate with people who live in areas where they may not have good internet access? How do we communicate with now in America we're seeing more Hispanics. How are we going to get them to understand and make sure that we're protecting every single human being that we're supposed to protect in this country? And so even in our inner city schools, I think it's important for me as a black meteorologist to go into inner city schools and to talk to young students about this field and to give them an aspiration to dream if they want to become a meteorologist to fulfill their dreams and goals. That's the one thing I can tell you. I was interested in broadcast meteorology growing up as a kid, but even in New Orleans at that time, I didn't see a black
Yeah.
meteorologist even on TV at that time. Um, I knew that's what I wanted to do, but I didn't see anyone who looked like me. But that didn't stop me from
Right.
still pursuing my dream. And so, but I think it's very important that as meteorologists, we get involved in our entire communities and begin to share what we're doing and how we can help protect and save citizens, but also how we can help young people dream to do what we do as meteorologists. I think this is a phenomenal field um, that is built around service. And so that's why it's called the National Weather Service, because this is a field where we serve um, the nation, um, this entire nation as it relates to weather. And weather impacts everything, it doesn't discriminate. Um, there's going to be some type of weather that's going to have impact. Weather is diverse.
Yeah.
So heat can kill, winter weather can kill, flooding kills, tornadoes kill. So, and then out west, weather impacts fire.
Fires.
And fires, as you can see, can destroy large communities and displace people. So, um, this I believe this field is kind of a calling that a lot of people come into. Most people, and this wasn't that way for me. I really got interested in meteorology. I want to say, well, I was interested in weather as a young kid, but it wasn't until high school that I decided to pursue it.
Wow. Yeah.
If you talk to most meteorologists, they decided to pursue it like in elementary school.
Really?
Yes,
Wow.
yes. Most of the meteorologists who work for me will tell you I decided to pursue this when I was in elementary school before they even knew what it took to pursue it. But they had set in their mind that's what I was going to do. I had an interest, but I didn't set in my mind I was going to do it until high school. But most meteorologists you run into, they'll tell you, I set in my mind in elementary school that that's what I wanted to do.
No, I can believe that. Like I said, I told my dad when I was 8 years old I was going to be an editorial cartoonist, which is about the weirdest thing you can tell your dad when you're 8 years old. He kind of looked at me like, "Oh, that's nice," But I mean, it lit a pilot light that and that's the thing. And for kids to be able to see you, be able to come into a school or get to meet you or get to see what you're doing, that's just so incredibly important. So I'm good on you for getting out and doing that. I appreciate
Yeah.
that. Like I said, you've got a good sized staff there. You've got a lot of area to cover. And, you're talking about how what you do in communicating. I remember the role, of course, Marty Pope, the hydrologist with you, that big part in the Delta flooding and Pearl River flooding just from was that a couple of years ago? It was right before the pandemic, the Pearl River. And I know it's up again, but like I said, the information that y'all collect and you interpret can affect people's lives and livelihood every single day. Tell us some other things that you do in the office there, in national weather, because I think a lot of people don't realize all the different things that y'all do.
So most of the climate data is held here at our office. So when it comes to the records, uh, we monitor all of the records. Um, when it comes to, you just mentioned it, with Marty and the hydrology program. So when it comes to our waterways, our rivers and our creeks around here, we're basically monitoring those and issuing forecasts on those, based on how much rainfall we get, if they're going to rise or fall.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to the climate, we have a OPAL observing program leader, which works with a lot of our volunteers. We have volunteer observers who collect rainfall data like yourself, and
Yeah.
who collect temperature data that help our forecasters issue the forecast. And so we work a lot with community volunteers who collect um, weather data for us. Um, in this office, we have, and I don't like to forget these guys, we have electronic technicians, and they keep our radars running. They keep our observation equipment up and moving. They keep NOAA weather radio going. Um, they are very valuable to this office when it comes to especially severe weather. There's been times where NOAA weather radio has gone out, and we've had to, get it back up and going. There's been times when the radar may go down in the midst of severe weather, and we've had to have our electronic technicians get those things up and going. So there's a lot that we do, a lot of positions that are in the office. The boss of the office who makes sure that everyone is doing right. We have an admin assistant here, and she's pretty much, make sure that everyone gets paid, make sure that the bills in the office are paid. And so there are different aspects of the weather service office that most people probably don't think about. I hope that's what you was asking me.
No, that's great. I was trying to think, is there anything that I've missed? I know we're coming up on time a little bit. Oh, I was going to ask, we're in a La Nina pattern right now as we speak, which means that because I know El Nino is a little bit wetter. You usually get
Mhm.
more rainfall, but
Whatever.
La Nina, you get more, like you don't get as many storms, but they're usually severe. Is that
Yeah,
correct? Yeah.
yeah. And so El Nino is usually wetter and warmer. La Nina is shows a pattern of drier and more of a cooler.
Yeah.
But when typically in La Nina years, we've seen some of the biggest storms, especially um, big severe weather events in the springtime. There's a lot of cold air forcing, and when cooler air comes down in the deep south and it interacts with warm air, we get big storms.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't be surprised. This is the South. A storm is a storm, and storms can be
Yeah.
troublesome for us. The best thing for us to do is to be prepared. I always tell citizens, have a safe spot. You should have a safe location in your home. Identify it. Usually try to find an inner room. Put as many walls between you and the outside element. Um, People who live in mobile homes in the deep
Yeah.
south, if someone's find a family friend who has a sturdy home that lives nearby, a family or friend that you can go hang out with when we have, especially on those days where we have tornado watches out. And then we have community shelters here, safe community safe
Mhm.
rooms, tornado safe rooms. If you don't have a family or a friend, then find a community shelter that you can go to during those times. Because just like, a couple years ago, We had two long track tornadoes. Um, that can happen any year here in Mississippi. And so our goal is to help people become safe, to save their property, and to give them the best guidance that we can when severe weather does strike so that they can make sure that their family and their friends are safe.
One of the things that you do, and I think a lot of people don't know, when you hear EF5 and EF1 and EF0, that's usually determined by the amount of damage on the Fujita, the enhanced Fujita scale on
Mm-hmm.
that. But one of the ways that's determined is that you send out survey teams. And
Yes.
after the storm that came through last week, y'all were pretty busy because there was like over 20 spin up tornadoes that y'all were. I can only imagine you having to hike through the woods and crawl over snakes and through swamps and everything else on that. What is that like to go on one of those survey teams?
Well, they're not, put it like this. Most meteorologists aren't going to hike through the woods and crawl over snakes.
Oh man, you just blew my whole image. I had just visions of y'all doing Indiana Jones stuff going through the swamps of Mississippi.
No, but so we do send out survey teams, and they get out the vehicle and they look at the damage. Um, but typically, yeah, it takes several days.
Yeah.
Last week we had 27
27.
tornadoes,
Yeah.
27 with that event, and it's it took us at least 4 or 5 days to get that complete. So yes, once we go through a large scale weather event, if especially if it's tornadoes or it can be straight line wind damage,
Yeah.
we'll send damage survey teams out for significant straight line wind damage as well. Um, but they go out and they take a computer with them. They have a on that computer they will have a GPS point that tells them exactly where they are. That GPS point usually is overlaid with the radar
Yeah.
that was used when that storm came through. They also have the warning polygons, and then they just track the storm. That's important for historical and research
Mhm.
pieces, but it's also important to emergency management. Those
Yeah.
communities, a lot of times, the way that the communities and government get funding back is based on our surveys and of the damage that's out there and the assessment of they make an assessment of the monetary cost of that was lost, the monetary loss of the damage that was produced by the storm. So that's a part of our jobs as well. That's a very important part of
Yeah.
our job. And so we have meteorologists that go out and survey those storms and get that information back to the people who need it so that um, we can help with the recovery piece of it.
Well, that was kind of a couple reasons I wanted to interview today. Number one is get to meet you and let people get to know you a little bit, and also too what the team does there and how important the role is of the National Weather Service, and to understand what you're doing. And the final thing before I let you go, of course, obviously social media is now a big part of what you do, and so it's like you're all social media broadcast. Stars in training now, but I kept you on during the event last week, and that was particularly tough because it was just a series of spin up tornadoes and they wouldn't last very long. But y'all had to be really on your toes on that, but you did a really good job staying on top of things, so I was just going to throw that out at you.
Social media is huge, and the way going back to Facebook Live, we were one of the first offices to test it, and so typically whenever we're issuing tornado warnings, we're typically trying to make sure that we're giving those who are watching us the information that they need.
Mm-hmm.
We're not trying to compete with our broadcast meteorologists at all. We're really just trying to enhance
Yeah.
and be effective in making sure that we're doing what we can to communicate the things that we know to help save life and property. That's what we're doing. But what happened with us was a couple of years back, a tornado, and I can't remember. This was probably 3 or 4 years ago. Tornado was actually going through Vicksburg,
Yeah.
and this was that one that went pretty much through the heart of town. And what we would do at that time was we would get on for maybe 5-10 minutes, say what was going on with the tornado, and then we'd jump off. If another tornado warning was issued, then we'd jump back on in 5-10 minutes, give them some, you know, uh, brief location of where the storm was and, some more safety tips, and then we'd jump off. Well, during this one that was going through Vicksburg, we started getting people in our Facebook chat room saying, no, stay on. It's like, we're losing power. And you're the only one. Yeah, we can't. They were like, we can't see our broadcast meteorologists. This is the only way we're getting information on what's going on with these storms. And so we began to stay on. It was the same thing a couple of years later. There was a storm that was headed up toward Mississippi State, and people started hitting the chat room. Thank you for being on live. You're the only information that we're getting on these storms. And so it really just, the traction just hit, and we start getting a lot more people paying attention to our Facebook page when we go live during severe storms. And so, man, I think when it comes to social media, the next generation, that's really the way they get their information.
Yeah.
They're getting news from their cell phones. They're getting news from, their computers. Like this TV on the screen behind me, they're not getting a whole lot of information that way anymore because they can get it instantaneously from this thing here. And so we're just trying to do our part. Again, weather impacts everybody. And if we can get information to whoever, we're trying to get it. The other thing that we learned was, again, some people don't have good local broadcast coverage in this state. There are parts of this state where people don't have good local TV broadcast coverage. They may get it, and they may have, some type of satellite or something like that. But they want to know what's going on with them locally. And so our Facebook page and our Twitter page is ways that we get information out to people where they know that we're interacting with them locally. The other thing I just thought about one more thing. The other thing that's good about us in Facebook Live is the individuals who are watching us, the citizens who are watching us, they can ask questions and put them in the chat, and we can respond right away. And that's what I love about it is if they have a question that we can answer or respond to immediately, then that's what we want to do, because we know that we're giving them the information that they need and what they want in the midst of these severe weather events that happen across our state.
Well, that happened last week because my family and I were in our safe place, and I was watching y'all, and there was a spin up that was down near Clinton, which was kind of heading this direction. I asked, would that storm hold together and still on that? And they were like, no, it might not, but it's most likely spin up and so forth. So instead of it being a long track, but anyway, I was able to ask that question while I'm sitting there huddled with my dog and my family in a very small space. So thank you. Wanted to say, I appreciate that on that too. And I like, I share whenever your graphics are really good. So if there's a big major event coming up, I like to share it out on my platform. And I had a lady last week saying, I really wasn't paying attention to the weather, but I saw your thing. Thank you for the heads up. I said, well, thank the Weather Service. They're the ones who did all the hard work. I just shared it. So,
and that's the great piece about social media. You can take a graphic that we issue, put it on your page. Someone who may never visit the National Weather Service social media page, but they look at your page and you spread that information multifold. So that's the great piece about social media.
Yeah. Bill, thank you for taking the time today. I mean, I know you're a busy guy. We got a busy day coming up tomorrow, but by the time Sunday, this will all be through and we'll have a pretty day on Sunday. So I wanted to say thank you.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate you doing this interview. And whenever you want to reach out to me again, or anyone else in this office, if you'd like to do an interview with someone else, hey, we'll set it up. I'm not the only one in this office. I have, 26 other people here who help me do my job and do it well.
Well, thank you. And I'll take you up on that offer. That'd be great.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thanks. All right. Take care. Thank you for watching this episode of Mississippi Stories. Make sure to subscribe to the Mississippi Today YouTube channel and click the bell to be notified every time a new video uploads.